What's up, everybody? Clone here, your coach of the Honolunar Dancers, with a draft analysis video for the UDN, which I believe is the Universal Draft Network. A little bit of background. It's going to be a YouTuber league. Upload required, of course. So all my battles will be going on YouTube. So subscribe if you want to see more battles, I guess, when they come out. The first couple of battles should be happening like before February for sure, like mid-January, I believe. I have prep done for week 1 already, which is nice. So for the draft, which happened a couple days ago, I was picking 11th, which in a 16-man draft to me is almost like worst spot in the draft. Like 11 through like 10 through 13, I would say, is like pretty bad. So there's a lot of reasons why that was bad, but I feel like the draft that I came up with, despite picking 11th, was pretty solid overall. And I didn't feel like it was that bad, although there were a lot of there were some picks where if I were able to get them, they probably would have helped my draft overall, but a lot of the major Pokemon I wanted didn't get sniped, and that's really nice, considering I was picking 11th. And because I was picking 11th, I was pretty much just going to take whatever is the best Pokemon available, from a general standpoint, and try and build around it. So, luckily for me, the Pokemon in the middle, Megalodius, was the first Pokemon available. And as a mon, Megalodius is really solid. It does kind of steer your draft, I would say, and it kind of steered my focus to more of a bulky offense type of build rather than like more than like a Volturn, like kind of offensive build that like a Taco Coco gives and stuff like that. So I was trying to build, after I got Megalodius, I was trying to go a little bit more bulky offense kind of, and that's kind of like how a lot of my drafts go. But as a first Pokemon, Megalodius is amazing. 110 base speed is amazing. It's probably the best Calm Mind setup sweeper in the game. It has basically like, aside from HP, I think it's like 100, like 120, 140, 150. Like his stats are like really, really solid. Like just this bulk alone is really solid. And of course, he has a reliable recovery and recover and roost. And he gets like a lot of niche setup tools that kind of allow it to beat anything. Like reflect type is really cool. You bet I'm gonna use it some weeks. And then it gets almost perfect coverage, I would say. Like there's a lot of stuff like fire types where a fire type like Heatran, for example, doesn't really want to take a Surf, or like Mega T-Tar or normal T-Tar. They don't really like to take Surf. So in that sense, it hits a lot of the normal switch-ins. It does have coverage to beat them, and just as a whole, like Megalodius is a really bulky mon with a lot of useful tools. Obviously it gets like defog, so I'm probably not gonna run defog on this often, but as a whole, it's a really solid defogger. Obviously it gets bolt beam coverage. It's a phaser, and it just gets a lot of utility tools, along with the fact that it's the best Calm Mind sweeper in the game. It's a really nice speed tier. 110 is really nice. Pretty much outspeeds everything, aside from like the really fast Pokemon, and nothing over 110 is really gonna OHKO this. Nothing over 110 speed is really gonna OHKO this, you know. So, as a mon that I wanted to build around, I've never used this before, so I was really interested in using it. So at this point, I was looking at trying to go for my Firewater Grass Core, and I saw that Arcanine was in C, and to me personally, I feel like Arcanine is a really solid B. So I went for Arcanine round 2. I don't regret it. Arcanine is a really solid mon. It's talked about it before, because I've drafted it before, but reliable recovery, Intimidate is really useful. All three of its abilities, like Intimidate, Flash Fire, and Justified, are all really useful, especially Justified because I have a Megalodius and +1 Flare Bits. There's no real switch into to Arcanine thanks to Wild Charge, and it gets ground coverage as well. So there's not a lot of stuff to like to switch into Arcanine at +1, and especially if it's like banded +1, that's like it's probably gonna 2-hit kill your water type, you know, with like Flare Blitz. But it's has a lot of options, Arcanine as a whole, and to me I prioritize fire types a lot because I feel like there aren't many great fire types, and Arcanine is one of those fire types where I feel like its synergy with Mega Latias in particular is really solid, and the fact that it resists Fairy, obviously, which Mega Latias doesn't like. It resists Ice, which Mega Latias doesn't like. Justified allows it to take on Dark types, and what Mega Latias offers Arcanine is the fact that it's a ground immunity, which obviously Arcanine does not appreciate. Getting hit by EQ. It can get rid of Rocks, which Arcanine also doesn't like. It's a water type switch in as well for Arcanine, and just in general, I feel like the two had a really solid pairing. You know, like as a pivot, Arcanine is really good. Like you can go Arcanine and then on the fighting type, and then go into your Mega Latias afterwards, and then that gives you a free Calm Mind basically. On like let's say if they go for EQ on the Arcanine at -1, that's really nice for you. And Mega Latias has such great bulk that Intimidate is really nice for Mega Latias in order to set up. And so I just felt like tier 3 is like humongous value, and picking 11th, I really couldn't see this coming back to me. So I decided to take it early, especially because I was pretty flexible as far as the rest of my draft went, but I just really wanted to prioritize the Firewater Grass core. And so my next pick was Roserade. Now Roserade is also interesting because together with Latias does a lot of the same things as far as a core with Roserade that it does with Arcanine, the fact that it takes on psychic types. And Roserade offensively is really good, and Roserade defensively is also very good. Basically the Roserade spike support I see as being really valuable. Like just recently I've really tried to get myself to try and draft spikes, whether it be normal spikes or toxic spikes. I just find like before spikes used to be a thing to me, where it's like it's not like a huge priority, but if you get it, it's nice to have. But like now I'm really trying to find room on my draft for spikes and toxic spikes, and Roserade was in C, which to me is also value, because I feel like Roserade is an average B, I would say, like a mid-tier B, but having spikes and a pretty solid dual typing is really nice for Roserade, especially when offensively it's really solid. Technician, HP anything is really solid to hit anything that wants to try and switch in on it. Like I don't know, but like a Gliscor, I don't know, would probably die to HP Ice, or Scissor. Scissor is probably a better example, because you know it does obviously deal with its Roserade stab really well, and the fact that it's Steel Bug, but obviously it gets O-code by HP Fire if it's Technician boosted. I'm pretty sure like even Aqua Berry takes like a lot from HP Fire if it's Technician boosted, especially if it's Life Orb. So spike support along with a useful mon that fits kind of like the bulky offense archetype, I felt like was really useful. That's why I took it round 3. Maybe a little bit too early, but Roserade was one of those mons where I really wanted to take it as early as possible. And so at this point, I believe I was thinking about water types, and I was thinking about Snorlax. So I was basically thinking Suicune or Milotic, and Suicune got taken, so I was like, well, I have to go for Milotic now. And so I went for Milotic as my third pick, although if I was able to, I'd probably take Snorlax earlier, but I was able to get Snorlax later anyways. But here I opted for Milotic. It kind of fulfills, like, I feel like this Firewater Grass core is really solid. All three of them, although Milotic isn't like great at offensively pressuring you, you know, but Haze, Scald Burns, the fact that it gets refreshed, so you can't really toxic this thing, and you can't beat it like that, you know. So Milotic is really solid defensively, and it's not like something you can just set up on. Like something like Alamalola, where it's really like what's the best way to describe it? It's really easy to set up on like a Pokemon like Alamalola because it doesn't get too much to dissuade you from like subbing up or setting up a D-Dance. But with Milotic, you can't really go for those things because of the useful moves it gets, and the fact it gets like Mirror Coat for like special attackers, like a Tapu Koko Thunderbolt. That's not killing Milotic, obviously. And then your Tapu Koko's gone because of Mirror Coat. But the three of these Pokemon together, this Farwater Grass, I feel like is really solid. In fact, that they're all really bulky and they have offensive pressure in their own way. All three get reliable recovery, which is nice because the problem with Suicune, I feel like Suicune is worse defensively but better offensively. But I also felt like there was a problem if I went Suicune that my team would be too reliant on setup, and going for the fact that both of them were Calm Mind setup sweepers was a little bit troubling to me. I felt like it could present some problems because basically Roar gets 2 times more value because I have two Pokemon that like to set up Calm Minds and kind of sweep that way. So it was nice getting Milotic. I think with the way that my draft ended up, I think Milotic would probably be the better pick overall. It's a nice speed tier at 81 as well, which is something nice. Basically all three of these Pokemon, all four of the Pokemon I've drafted so far had really nice speed tiers. I think Roserade is at 90, Arcanine's at 95, and Milotic's at 81, which kind of fills in that like 80 to 100 speed tier really nicely, in my opinion. And so this core is probably the core, along with Snorlax, is probably the core I wanted for my draft. This is the 5 Pokemon I wanted. Like after I got Mega Latios, these were probably the 5 Pokemon I wanted, and the rest of my draft was kind of like flexible. And I'll talk about Snorlax real quick, but Snorlax also tier 3, which is to me value. So I picked up 3 Pokemon in tier 3 that I feel like are value. Milotic wasn't in tier 3 obviously, but Roserade, Arcanine, and Snorlax I feel like are all really solid tier 2s. Although Snorlax is kind of a Pokemon where he's not the greatest tier 2, but he's also too strong for tier 3 in my opinion. So that's why I took him like kind of late, but also kind of early. But Snorlax is a really nice for my draft. It gives me a second Toxic switch in, which obviously Mega Latios doesn't like. Milotic doesn't always like to get Toxic, unless you're running Refresh, and you're not always going to be running Refresh, you know. And Arcanine obviously doesn't appreciate it either. Roserade can obviously switch into Toxic, but if it's like Toxic from a Fire type or something, you know, then obviously Roserade does not like switching to that type of Toxic. But Snorlax gives me like a huge amount of bulk, along with Thick Fat. It's probably my best switch into like a Fire type or an Ice type, offensive Ice type. As a whole, like I have probably 4 Pokemon that these 4. The 4 Pokemon I picked previously, Milotic, Roserade, Arcanine, and Mega Latios, deal with fighting types extremely well, each in their own way, and the fact that like an Infernape will never be able to break a Milotic, like unless you're like some crazy niche set, which probably would lose to Mega Latios. So like these 4 Pokemon are really solid at dealing with fighting types for Snorlax, which is his biggest weakness. And Snorlax kind of, it's just a really nice win con. I felt like my draft was a little bit lacking as far as physical attackers goes, even though I had Arcanine. I really wanted something kind of like the opposite of Mega Latios in a sense, that he's slow, he's bulky as well, however, but he hits hard physically rather than specially. That's a really niche example, but it's really useful because Snorlax is not easy to prep for. It's another useful speed tier, I think at 50, I believe. Let me double check. No, 30. Which 30 is also really nice. Like there's stuff like Amoonguss, of course, and then like I can speed creep 40s and 50s. Who, you know, like a base 40 Pokemon doesn't really want to run speed. You know, if you're like that slow, but getting outsped by Snorlax doesn't really benefit you either. You know. So as a whole, Snorlax is really nice. It has 3 amazing abilities, and Gluttony, which allows you to recycle the Figgy Berries at 50% instead of 25%. Thick Fat, which is really useful for dealing with offensive Fire and Isis types. What else? and immunity, which is nice because it gives me a second toxic switch in, which is very useful. And the fact that I don't have like Heal Bell. I have like refresh on 2 of my Pokemon, but I don't really have Heal Bell yet. So these 5 Pokemon I felt like were a really solid core. Oh yeah, and Snorlax gives me Pursuit Trapping, which helps with Megalodius, of course, because Megalodius isn't really like fighting other bulky psychic types, as they don't take much from like a Clefable, or I mean Clefable is not a bulky psychic type, but like Mew, who can also Calm Mind against him, but like Snorlax kind of like solves that problem where Snorlax would be able to deal with the Mew and possibly eliminate it with Pursuit. So Snorlax, I felt like it was really versatile for being in tier 3, so I felt like taking it early is kind of fulfilled my core. And so these 5 Pokemon, I felt like 5 Pokemon on the right aside from Sneasel, I felt like were really solid, and I kind of focused my mid-tier picks before I went for my higher tier and like really low tier picks. So I took a lot of mid-tier value in my opinion. And so at this point I was thinking I needed another like a reliable defogger, you know, like Megalodius, you don't want. Oh wait, no, I did not take him yet. I took at this point I took Aromatisse. So Aromatisse was in tier 5, which I did not see until I was looking for a fairy. I was looking for like all the standard fairies. I was like, what should I take? And I saw Aromatisse in tier 5, and I was like, what? Aromatisse is a really solid tier 5. And it's really solid tier 4, and the fact that you cannot taunt it, you cannot encore it, any of that because of its ability. I forgot what it's called. Is it Flower? No, it's not. It's like something Veil, Aroma Veil, I think. But it's similar to like the Licky in that sense, where Licky can't be taunted. I think Licky is also tier 5. I'm not sure though. But that's really nice for Wishbastard because I've dealt with a lot of Wishbastards in the past through taunt and encore support, and so having this way to deal with Wishbastards now is really, or having a Wishbastard that doesn't have to worry about that stuff is really nice. Along with the fact that Aromatisse is like, it's pretty good offensively, honestly. It has access to Nasty Plot, and it's like 100, it's like 100, I think, special attack, which is not amazing, but along with Trick Room, it's like a pretty potent sweeper. Although it's not something that I'm gonna use often, but I did make it one of my Z-mons, and so because it was an E-mon, and we were using Z points, so you can't obviously have like 2 A tiers being your Z-mon. I feel like it was really value, especially in tier 5. And the fact that it gives me Wish, which makes my team a whole lot bulkier than it already is. I like to prioritize fairies as well as fire types, and I feel like there aren't many great fairies, and so I took this like round 5, I believe, or round 6, which is pretty early for tier E-mon, but I felt like it was really value, when normally it would be in tier 4. It gives me Heal Bell as well, which is something I wanted to draft, although I wasn't sure how I would be able to draft it. And just as a whole, Aromatisse is like, it's not amazing defensively, but the fact that it's E and doesn't have to always show is really nice, because then I can just bring this whenever I feel like bringing it, you know. And it gets like screens, and it gets a lot of useful tools with being along with the fact that it's a reliable Wishbasser. And so, because personally, I am not a big fan of drafting Wish. Even with a bulky offense build, I'm not a fan of drafting Wish, especially when all 5 of the previous Pokemon I drafted have access to reliable recovery. I guess Snorlax is not reliable, but it's almost reliable in Recycle Figgy Berry. And so at this point I wasn't really feeling like drafting a fairy with a Wish, but I saw Aromatisse in tier 5, which to me is in humongous value. This is a pretty solid tier 4 in my opinion. So I took Aromatisse here, and I don't feel like it was too early, especially because a lot of people didn't see it, so I felt like if anybody saw it at this point, they would definitely draft it. And it was kind of at that point of the draft where you're starting to look for your lower tier Pokemon, trying to see like what low tier would fit your draft best, and kind of keeping that in the back of your mind as you draft more mid tier Pokemon. And so I kind of went for mid tier, low tier at this point. And so yeah, I made Aromatisse one of my Z users because, you know, Nasty Plot Trick Room is a very viable set, and it could have potentially good matchups, and the fact that it allows me to have have an A Pokemon be my Z user is really nice. And so at this point, I believe I was looking at um defoggers, and I was thinking, because I did not have my A Pokemon at this point yet, which is pretty funny, but I was looking at defoggers and I had an A Pokemon, and I was thinking, I didn't have an electric type yet, and Zapdos fit really nicely with this bulky offense team. I've used Zapdos just recently actually, made playoffs with it in the league, so I'm pretty comfortable with Zapdos. It's a really solid Pokemon. It's a really reliable defogger. And obviously I would be running defog on it most weeks. Over Megalodius, depending on the matchup. It gives me another ice weakness, but I don't feel like I'm that weak to ice. And the fact that I have Arcanine, Milotic, and Snorlax, who can all resist ice in their own way. So, it gives me another defogger, and it's like probably one of the best defoggers in draft format. And the fact that it has really solid coverage, like Heat Wave, dealing with like stuff like Pharaoh, and it gets access to U-turn, so you can get momentum even against ground types or lightning rod Pokemon. And just as a whole, like Zapdos is a nice 100 base speed. I wasn't sure what other electric types I wanted at this point, because I was looking at Thundurus T and Thundee, but I felt like having another defogger would be really nice. I didn't end up drafting a spinner, but just having a defogger would be nice, especially because I wasn't gonna draft more than 2 defoggers, as you see by my draft. Having one of the best defoggers, in my opinion, was nice, in the fact that I've used this recently, so I'm comfortable with it as well. And so at this point, I was like, I don't have an A Pokemon. Zapdos is a really solid A Pokemon. It hasn't been taken yet, so I'll probably take it. You know, it's one of the better Pokemon in A, so I felt like it wasn't a bad pick here. And so here, I believe I take some more low tier value, just because I felt like filling my my Dragon Fairy Steel core at this point, so I went for the Registeel. And Registeel, along with Aromatisse, makes Registeel very bulky actually. And the fact that it's a nice pivot that I can support with Wish. It wasn't something I was looking at before I got Aromatisse, but I'm a big fan of reliable rocks, and Registeel is pretty reliable at that. Because at this point I don't have a rocker, obviously. But I really like low tier rocks. It's something that recently I've kind of fell in love with. Same with spikes, where I like to draft like tier 4 and 5 rockers that are really solid at rocking, like a Bronzong kind of. Obviously, but I have a psychic type, so Bronzong wouldn't be amazing. But Registeel is very similar to Bronzong with the fact that it's really bulky. Like even super effective damage. Like it's an Infernape, I believe, the only Infernape set that has a chance to like OHKO. A Registeel would be like banded, and like Infernape is a really solid mon, and both its stabs take it on. And so not just Infernape, but like in general, not many fighting types are gonna OHKO this, and not many fire types are gonna OHKO this. Not many ground types. Like I believe like a +1 Haxorus Earthquake Z does not even kill this thing. It's pretty amazing. You cannot set up on this thing because of its access to Seismic Toss and Thunder Wave, which is nice. I believe it gets Reflect. It gets a Reflect or Light Screen, one of them, I believe. It might get both, but I think it gets one for sure. So, as a Steel Pokemon, it was really nice. It's a really nice last addition to my Dragon Fairy Steel core. And the fact that it's just a really bulky Steel type that I can support with Wish. Situationally, I might have good matchup where I want a really bulky Steel type to check something. I don't know, like a Dragon. Like a Haxorus, I guess. But it gives me rocks as well, which I felt like was pretty important at this point. So, at this point, I was pretty happy with my draft because I had fulfilled my Firewater Grass core and my Dragon Fairy Steel. There's one other core I'd like to fulfill though. I believe it's Psychic Dark Fighting. So at this point I was like, there's a lot of Pokemon left, and I was thinking about how best to get like, there's some like other types that I like really like to have, like a rock type. A rock type is like never bad in my opinion, because rock is really good offensive typing, and I've drafted Nihilego in the past and I've really loved Nihilego. But like rock types in general, and like a ghost type is nice to have for spin blocking, and as a reliable high jump kick switch in and stuff like that. But in general, like I felt like there's a lot of different like combinations of Pokemon left, because I did have like a good amount of coins at this point. I think I had like 300 points, I think, or like 300 points for like 3 months or something like that. Because I only took one Pokemon in the using my points, Snorlax. So everything else was like filled out by my tiers, my obligatory, if that's the word, obligatory tiers. So at this point I was pretty happy with my A through E picks and 2 C's, I believe. And so I felt like this combination of my last Pokemon fit well. I was thinking a lot of stuff. I was thinking like Crocodile, because it gives me a ground type, which is always very important. I was thinking like Tyranitar, because I was able to afford another A, and I was thinking of drafting an A, because it basically, I was thinking there's a lot of value in D, and it was kind of like I was forced to draft an A and 2 Ds or 3 Cs, and I didn't really feel like drafting more Cs, especially because there weren't that many types in C to fill what I needed. And so at the end of the day I went for these last 3 Pokemon. So the first one was Sneasel. Now Sneasel fills that dark fighting psychic core that I like to go for as my third core that I almost always want to draft. And Sneasel's nice because it also has a secondary ice typing, and it gives me, it's not the best speed tier for your fastest Pokemon, but it's pretty solid in the fact that my draft is more bulky offense anyways, so I'm not hoping for like super fast Pokemon that will like full turns force you out and stuff like that. I'm trying to like take hits and then return with similar damage, you know? So my Pokemon are kind of like as good as taking hits as they are as dealing damage. And so Sneasel doesn't really fit that, but it gives me Pursuit Trapping. It gives me a Dark type, and it gives me nice speed tier that, you know, 115 is not the greatest in the world. But I feel like 115 is kind of the sorry. Yeah, 115 is kind of like the minimum you should shoot for. Like, no matter what draft you're going for, you should try and like shoot for 115. And so Sneasel is pretty solid. It gives me a knockoff, which I don't believe I have, unless Registeel learns it. I don't think Registeel learns it though, but I don't think I have knockoff aside from Weavile, which is nice. In situationally, I feel like it could come. It's not I'm not the biggest fan of Sneasel, but what it offered kind of like fit a lot of the stuff that I needed. And I didn't have an ice type yet, and I needed a dark type, so I felt like Sneasel was probably better than going for T-Tar, which would be like a kind of different draft. But at this point, I believe I take the Palossand, second to last Mon. And so Palossand was interesting because it gives me a second rocker, which is useful, and also gives me a nice ghost typing. The fact that I'm not sure how many rockers are also able to spin block. I know Lola Marowak is able to, but I'm not sure how many exactly. But it's pretty small number, I imagine. I know like Frostlass can obviously do it, but Frostlass doesn't set up rocks; it sets up spikes. But ghost typing is always nice to have. It's not something that I always look to draft, but it's nice to have. But a ground type is something I 100% wanted for sure. I don't think a draft is really good without a ground type, so it's one of those typings that you need to draft, in my opinion. And so I've used Palossand recently as well, and I think Palossand is pretty solid. It has its flaws for sure. The fact that it's bulky, but it's not bulky enough, you know. But I feel like along with Registeel, it gives me 2 different rockers who would want to come in different weeks, you know. Like Registeel is obviously weak to raw, not rock. It's weak to fighting. It's weak to knockoff, in the fact that, or just in general, it's weak to getting its item removed from the fact that it doesn't get reliable recovery, and it's not great at dealing with fire types, fighting types, or ground types, which all three of those types don't do amazing against Palossand, which is nice. So that it basically gives me two different value rockers that would want to come in different times, and that's pretty useful in my opinion. So yeah, that's pretty useful in the fact that it gets reliable recovery, which is nice. So you don't have to, I'm not forced to bring Wish to support it. It's weak to knock. It's weak to knock, but it's not that weak to knock, And the fact that it's super effective damage, but it has, I'd say like Registeel getting knocked off is a lot more damaging than like doing 40 to Palossand to set up rocks, and then later you can like shore up with it, which is useful. And it's pretty useful in niche situations where like against sand it's really nice. Like I don't know, if they had like a Gigalith or something, I get 75% recovery instead of 50%. So I feel like it's kind of a matchup dependent Pokemon, but when it does come, it probably put in a lot of work. And so here's my last Pokemon and my Z-user as well. Terrakion is a Pokemon that I've used a little bit in the past, but not too much. It's been a while since I've used Terrakion, but Terrakion is not the greatest aid, to be honest, but it kind of gives me more offense physically, which is something I was, from the moment I picked Snorlax, I knew I wanted another like kind of more offensive, more faster, kind of fast, like Megalodius fast, but a physical version. And so Terrakion does that really well. And the fact that it gives me another Dark Switch in, which is nice for my Megalodius. Like my three kind of high tier picks, and Terrakion, Zapdos, and Megalodius, they fit what's the word? They fit each other's weaknesses really well. In the fact that Terrakion can take Ice Beams, it can take Knockoff, or like Dark Stab in general. Thanks to its fighting type and Justified. And it's able to deal with like steel types, bulky steels, dark types, opposing flying types, and just in general it gives me like a fighting type that's really fast. Like 108 is really nice. It's not amazing, but 108 is kind of like a premier speed tier. A lot of fast wall breakers are at 108, so it's another useful speed tier. And because I believe my next slowest mon is Zapdos, I think. Yeah, my next slowest mon is Zapdos. So it's nice to have something in the middle of Zapdos and Megalodius. And it's another Pokemon where my team is kind of setup oriented, but a lot of my Pokemon do damage without setup regardless. And so Terrakion is kind of unpredictable, especially with the Z Crystal and the fact that it can be SD, it can be Rock Polish, it can be Scarf Banded. But just in general, it's a really strong physical wall breaker, which I wanted. It'll probably not always come, and it's kind of like a situational bring, but it's a lot more versatile than like my Palossand, where I don't see Palossand coming majority of the weeks, but I can see Terrakion definitely coming majority of the weeks. And like, because I was able to get so much value with my mid-tier picks, like I saved 20 points with Roserades, Arcanine, and Snorlax, so that's like 20 times 3, which is 60 points. And so I believe 60 points is the difference between 120 and 180, if my math is correct. But so basically it's the difference between getting like a Terrakion and then getting like a B fighting type, which I'm not even sure what fighting types are in B. Let me go look for a fighting type in B. That isn't Infernape, because Infernape is obviously a pretty good fighting type in B. It's the difference between like a Terrakion and Cobalion, basically. Like the value that I was able to get with my Milotic, or not my Milotic, with my Roserade, Arcanine, and Snorlax, I was able to upgrade a Como to a Terrakion, and then that Terrakion obviously fulfills like a lot of the typing that I was missing, and so that's really nice to have. But as a whole, I'm pretty happy with my draft. It's it's really nice in the fact that it's really well balanced. I feel like I don't think a lot of my drafts, they tend to be a little bit top heavy, and although this draft is top heavy in the fact that I have 2 A's and an A tier mega, obviously, I don't feel like my Terrakion is going to be. I don't feel like I'm relying on Terrakion to put in to like kind of carry its weight, you know. Where a lot of times where I feel like when I draft an A and it has to really pull its weight. Like I've drafted Infernape recently, and I brought Infernape every single week of that season, so it really pulled its weight, I would say, in my opinion. Because I did make playoffs that season, and Infernape was obviously in the top 10. Was one of the Pokemon in the top 10 kill boards, and so I don't feel like any single Pokemon aside from Mega Latios is kind of like expected to do more than they really are, you know. Like I feel like Roserade is going to be as useful as Zapdos, you know. Even though Zapdos is my designated defogger, Roserade's spikes are really useful, and that kind of goes between all of them, you know. And so I don't really see myself making trades with this team as far as right now. And you know, a lot of my drafts, I feel like there are just a couple of trades that I have in mind. But I feel like this is one of the first drafts in like forever where I don't feel like I'm thinking of any trades, because just typing wise, speed tier wise, I know I have a pretty big gap, I want to say, between my Snorlax and my Lodic. I believe there's a big gap there. I'm not sure how fast Registeel is. Is Registeel 50? Let me double check. No, Registeel's, Registeel's 50. So yeah, I have a gap between 81 and 50, which is probably the only big significant weakness to my draft, I would say, along with the fact that my fastest is 115. But you know, 115 is not that bad. So as far as weaknesses, I don't see too many big weaknesses. I was able to draft all forms of hazards except for webs, which I don't think webs is necessary unless like I feel like webs are probably necessary if you're a wall breaker. If you have a wall breaker who really benefits from webs, so like something like a Bisharp would really benefit from webs, you know. But none of my Pokemon really benefit from webs. Like a Terrakion is really fast just on its own. It's like webs is kind of unnecessary unless you're going against like opposing Scarfers. But just as a whole, like I don't think webs would be that useful. I have Heal Bell support from Aromatisse, a lot of different toxic switch-ins. Almost every typing. I believe I'm missing Bug. Just Bug. Maybe another like niche type that I'm not thinking of, but I know I'm missing Bug, which isn't that important, you know. Bug is like kind of like Ice, where my Sneasel, where like I was able to get like a Bug Dark, it'd be nice to have, but like not mandatory. Especially because I have pretty solid ground switch-ins, and ground immunities all over my draft. But yeah, as a whole, I don't see any big significant weaknesses looking at all these mons together, and it's probably gonna be a really fun season using this mons. It's one of the better teams that I've put together, I would say. There wasn't like many, like aside from like Suicune Snipe, I wouldn't say there wasn't really any big snipes, and overall I'm probably more happy with my Lodic than I would be with Suicune, for reasons I've listed. But there wasn't any big snipes that kind of hurt my draft. And I was able to get like the 5 major mons that I wanted, and I was able to, because drafting this was kind of like in 2 parts, where the Pokemon on the right hand were like, aside from Sneasel, were kind of Pokemon I 100% wanted, and the Pokemon on the left hand with Sneasel were Pokemon that I saw that I felt like would fit my draft really well. And so drafting mid-tier value to me kind of helped this draft a lot, and drafting that like Roserade, Arcanine, Snorlax combination basically got me that Terrakion, because that Terrakion would not be a Terrakion without it. And so, but yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. Z users is Terrakion and Aromatisse, because I believe the Z users, they were using Z points, and so you're given like 100 Z points, where tier 1 is 80, etc, etc. And so I was forced to get like a tier 1 and a tier 5 if I wanted Terrakion, and so, which is another reason why I drafted Terrakion over Tyranitar. Because Terrakion is a really solid Z user and Tyranitar isn't really. As a whole, I'm trying to think of any last comments, but as a whole, I feel like this team is as a whole. I feel like this team is a team good enough to win the finals, in my opinion. Which is really important to me because I haven't drafted a team where I feel like I could win the finals with in a while. And obviously, I have success with teams where I don't even feel that way. But like a couple of seasons ago, I had this really whack Trick Room team where I was like, it was like really weak to ice, and I made playoffs with it, but I just wasn't feeling finals, you know. But I do feel like this team can get me to the finals without trades, which is really nice. Because basically, to me, it's just about personal skill. So if I play well, like I hope to, and I have in the past, then I know that I can make the finals and for sure make playoffs. So it's kind of like I have no excuses kind of thing this season. Where if I do like really poorly, whether it be the regular season or in playoffs, it's kind of like all my fault, you know. And this is kind of like the first team in a while where I felt that way. And so that's it's pretty interesting to me because I'm gonna have to look at every prep, and it's basically a lot more reliant on my skill, I feel like, than because basically I'm finally able to use a draft where it's solid enough to carry. It's solid enough to where it has no significant weaknesses aside from like that speed tier gap, not having webs, which isn't too important, like missing bug type, which is and my fastest being 115, which doesn't matter too much, especially because I have rock polish, and I have pretty solid Scarfers as well, I'd say. Like Scarf Zapdos is something that, like, with Scarfers, I feel like if your Scarfer is pretty obvious that it's gonna be Scarf most weeks, like Mienshao is, where Mienshao 105 is really solid base speed, but it's not solid enough, you know, where it's pretty obvious that Mienshao is gonna be Scarf most weeks, unless your speed tiers are worse than his, you know. But like most people would have a base 100, so you can't really go like banded, or I mean, most people would have like a base 108 or base 110, so you can't really go banded on Mienshao, otherwise you get outsped by those, and in general you just want to be able to outspeed those 108s and speed slower Scarfers. So I feel like my Scarfers, as far as possible Scarfers, are Pokemon that you don't really see running Scarf too often, like a Roserade, Zapdos, even Terrakion, where Terrakion does have versatility outside of being a Scarfer, and even Arcanine, Sneasel. They're all really interesting Scarfers because you're not really gonna expect them to be Scarfers. Maybe Sneasel, although being 115, you don't really need to run Scarf on it, you know. But I believe that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover over. First week, I believe it's gonna probably happen like sometime mid-January is when we're gonna get the battle done and uploaded. I believe the UDN will be having like a mini draft analysis video coming up in the next couple of days, which will be interesting to watch. I know I have to do an interview for it, or like not really an interview, but kind of do what I've did in this video, except briefer. Aside from that, I think power rankings will come. I'll probably put that in the description when it does come out. Obviously it's not out yet, but it'll probably come out within the next week, I would say. But yeah, and that was it for the video. If you guys enjoyed and want to watch, you know, see how my team does for the rest of the season, please subscribe, like the video, share, do whatever you gotta do. That's pretty much it. Looking forward to using this team and looking forward to battling a lot of the coaches, you know. I think I'll have a lot of fun in this league, and it'll be really fun to finally do like a YouTuber league, something I wasn't able to do before. That's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace.